Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Two Harbors City Council Candidate Forum this Thursday, October 10th. I'm Kitty Mayo, editor for the Lake County Press. I'm pleased to be here as your moderator for the event, which is sponsored by Lake County Press, KTWH Two Harbors Community Radio, and Jose Leon Two Harbors Media. In addition to being aired live on the radio at 99.5 FM and audio streamed at ktwh.org, the live stream video is available on the KTWH YouTube channel found on the homepage at KTWH. And we're ready to start. We're here with Laura Goutermont and Tod Redmann, both vying for the seat of counselor for Ward 4. Welcome, you guys. Thanks for being here. We did a rousing round of rock, paper, scissors, and Todd's going to start with an introduction. Todd, you have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Well, I'd like to start first by thanking you and KTWH for hosting this. I think it's valuable for people in the community to hear from candidates. There's kind of limited opportunities for people to learn about the candidates. We certainly have been making our rounds, making our case with the voters in the 4th Ward. But thanks again for doing this. And I want to thank my opponent, Laura, for running a good campaign. So far it's been very, amicable. And I think Ward 4 is lucky to have 2 candidates seeking this office. In these days where people are more and more reluctant to run for these offices, having a choice, I think, is a good thing. And our voters are very fortunate to have some choices here. My name is Tod Redmann. I am seeking the Ward 4 City Council position. I'm currently a member of the Zoning and Planning Commission. I've enjoyed that role. I really got involved, starting with the kind of recall process for Chris Swanson. I had some friends in the community that were very personally affected by some of the things that were going on, and unfortunately, the town had to go down that road. But the voters responded pretty loud and clear with a clear recall, the first in Minnesota state history of a sitting mayor. And at that point, I thought, sitting on the sidelines, and just complaining about something or is not the right approach. People should get involved. That's what drove me to get on zoning and planning. My wife and I moved to the area about 7.5 years ago after our last child went to college, and this is our new hometown, and we love it.
Thank you, Todd. And Laura, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you. And also thank you for hosting this tonight, and thank you, Todd. My name is Laura Goutermont. I was born here and raised here in Two Harbors. My parents were Jim and Val Osbachen. I had a wonderful childhood here and graduated from Two Harbors High School. Like many young people, I thought I needed to leave the small town and go see the world. So I left for 15 years and ended up down south in Texas and Louisiana and Florida. I joined the military. I got my RN, my BSN, went into the military as an officer. But Two Harbors was always in my heart. And every time I came home to visit, I just wanted to be back here. And I also wanted to do something for my community. I wanted to give back to my community. So in 1995, I moved back here before my oldest daughter was going into kindergarten. I wanted my children to enjoy the childhood I had. Back then we didn't lock doors, and the kids were able to run around and play night games, and they had all of that. So the other part of that then is, of course, giving back to my community. I worked in Duluth, but I always had my eye on the director of nursing job at Lakeview Hospital. I eventually did get that job, and I worked in that position for 13 years. And while I did that, giving back to the community that way, I also was on the Two Harbors Area Fund Board. I was on the ambulance board, Lake County Ambulance Board, and the Arrowhead EMS Board. With new leadership, I was let go, And I went back to St. Luke's, and I was lucky enough they put me back through school, and I became an advanced wound ostomy continence nurse, and I work casually at St. Luke's now. However, I'm still very involved in the community. I am now the president of the Two Harbors Curling Club, and I have been on our city rec board, I think, for 8 or 10 years. I was going to look at that before I came here, but I think it's an important thing to give back to your community, to volunteer for things.
Thanks, Laura.
Okay.
Now we're going to start with the questions, and Laura, I'll give this to you first. So the first question is kind of a long one, and it's probably fresh in everybody's memory, though. How would you address the divergent opinions about the development on DNR property, soon to be city-owned, at Agate Bay? Please tell us your idea of the right balance of commercial versus non-commercial space at the waterfront.
Well, I think you said it well. It needs to be balanced. I think we can do a development down there that meets all kinds of the needs of the public, of our community. You know, we talk about the hotel being put up on more by the commercial end of things. But then you've got the rest of the area, whether it's for fishing, you've got the kayaking, you've got the open space. You know, how can we develop that to attract people to continue to enjoy the beauty of the lake on this end of things? So I think there's enough, and I don't know what the beautification committee, where they're at with things and the development and the land and everything going on, but I believe we can meet the needs of a lot of different people in our area. And I would be, you talked about different opinions. I think number one, we need to listen. When you're in this kind of position, you listen to those opinions. You listen to your constituents, and I would say I want my constituents to let me know. I mean, if I get in this position, I want to hear from my constituents. And then as a council, you have to make a decision. Sometimes they're hard decisions, but you're not going to please everyone. But I think you need to look at what most of the constituents want and what's good for our community. But I think there can definitely be a balanced approach down there.
Thank you, Laura. I'm going to read the same question to you, Todd. How would you address the divergent opinions about development on DNR property soon to be city-owned at Agate Bay? Please tell us your idea of the right balance of commercial versus non-commercial space at the waterfront.
Laura's answer was a good one, and my answer probably doesn't differ greatly. As part of zoning and planning, we've been very much involved in this issue, and I'd like to commend the waterfront group, who have put in countless hours, written grants to have architects come and prepare some plans, which I would say has been a very democratic process. The community has been offered opportunities to weigh in time and time again. I've been happy to attend some of those and participate in those, beyond my role on zoning and planning, as just a citizen of the community. And I think we have to kind of respect their work in some ways and the input that has happened. Zoning and planning hosted a public meeting here, a special meeting for our business community, which was very well attended. We heard a lot of opinions about that space. I would just like to remind people about how rare it is to have waterfront access within a municipality on the North Shore. As land has gotten into increasingly private ownership, the public has been frozen out from access to the waterfront. And we have a gem here, and it's a unique opportunity. It was one of the things that really spurred me to get on zoning and planning, because that DNR transfer to the city opened up huge opportunities for this town, for in a variety of ways, for both commercial development and for the public's use and enjoyment of that space. I would look forward to working with that group and other groups in the city that have opinions as to what should be the right balance down there. I think we need to preserve the heart of that space for public access. I do not want to see that area walled off from public use. But I do believe there are huge opportunities for edge development for commercial space that can help increase tax base and employment, and a variety of things for this community. It also offers an opportunity for some of our underutilized downtown space that will be adjacent to that green space. For many years, we've lamented tourists driving right past Two Harbors to get to other places. This is an opportunity, for us to hold on to those tourists, for them to enjoy that space, and to patronize our businesses here locally.
Thank you, Todd. Todd, you get to go again. Next question is for you, Todd. What is your opinion about the proposed sale of land to developer NAI Legacy? So this is city land that's being proposed for sale to NAI Legacy for the purpose of constructing a 4-story hotel and event center.
So I would start that question, or my answer to that question, by saying that none of that is set in stone. There's still a very rigorous process ahead. The 4-story aspect of that proposal is a little bit concerning to me because it's in the waterfront zone. It would require a pretty significant variance from the standard from that zone to go to that height. But again, we're talking about adjacent development to the green space. So I want to emphasize to folks listening out there that this is not the space that's proposed in the DNR transfer. This is currently owned city property. The view shed is probably the biggest concern when you're going that high. The most affected, business or property owner in that area would be the brewery, which sits kind of directly behind that space. And, in my inquiries, they're excited about having something there. It's business that comes in, that it's dollars that will be spent at their business. So I'm not sensing a great deal of reluctance from the most affected party. But again, I am a bit concerned about the significant variance from the zone recommendation. I'm really excited about the event center because what an opportunity to have an event center that close to the water that's available year-round for both their patrons and for community organizations or individuals that want to use that space.
Thank you, Todd. And I should have clarified, this is on property that's currently owned by the city. It's adjacent to the currently DNR-owned property. We have maps. If you want to find out exactly what we're talking about, look at the Lake County Press. It's in there. So, Laura, I'm going to read that question for you. What is your opinion about the proposed sale of city land to developer NAI Legacy for the purpose of constructing a 4-story hotel and event center?
So when I first read that in the paper, because that's the first I heard about it, my first reaction was 4 stories. That's pretty high, and you have the docks there. But after talking to a lot of the business, I would echo what Todd says. Businesses are actually pretty excited about this. I think that more business brings more business. It just does. Competition brings more attraction of people. We need more lodging in our community, so I think that would be a positive. The event center, that would be huge. I think they said 500 people can be in the event center. It would be a beautiful place to have it. I think we would have a lot of venues there, again, bringing in a lot of business. All of that, I think, is positive. Like I said in my first question that I answered, it's more on the commercial end of things, and I would certainly encourage it to stay on that end of things to keep that waterfront open. I haven't heard a lot of negatives. Even when I went door to door, people really didn't. They wanted to talk about streets, which is always a big issue, but not so much about the hotel. So I could see some of the businesses complaining about their view. I get that. I think, when I've been to businesses in Duluth and things get built in front, you kind of get used to it after a while, but that certainly would be one thing that I could imagine would be a complaint, but mostly positives, and so I would most likely support it.
Thank you, Laura. And we'll have you start with the next question. Okay. Laura, with the workforce shortage and related housing shortage in Two Harbors, how would you contribute to increasing housing for aging and working residents?
So I have heard from many of the businesses that they have had trouble when they have gotten, some employees and then they can't find housing for their families and these people move away. Housing has been a big issue. I know when my daughter was looking for a house, she had to rent for probably about 8-10 months before she found something, and then it had to be redone completely. As I went around Laura Lane, I was thinking about our seniors and the fact that a lot of those are aging, and what are we doing about that? We have an aging population, and a lot of seniors want to stay in their homes, or they want to be in a place like Laura Lane where it's low maintenance. So I think our housing problem goes everywhere from renters to our single-family homes, to families that want to find their dream home, to our seniors. I think it's the whole vast population. And I know our population, I was reading a study, our population isn't going to increase a whole lot in the next 10 years, but our aging is. And then again, our young families, I want to keep them here. I want to keep the kids at our schools. We need that for our school base. And so I would support it I also want to say that I'm really pleased that the city HRA and the county HRA are working collaboratively. I think that's huge. You combine those resources and funding and the knowledge that they have to find the funding and to kind of look outside for different ideas of how do you help start building those homes. The county is building a couple of homes now, and they want to keep that going, but they want to work with the city. And we want to look at the opportunities of what properties available for what kind of housing. I do want to say that when I think of like an apartment or duplex kind of housing, I feel like we have to be careful where we build that. I mean, an apartment, I think you don't want that right in the middle of a residential area. You want to be more cognizant of it being more on the outskirts, I believe. I think duplexes can be made to look very nice nowadays, and that might be an opportunity on like the John A. Johnson area. I would love to see that knocked down, and the county almost had it, and then the county didn't have it. Now somebody still owns it, and it's an eyesore that needs to go eventually. So hopefully something will happen there, but it's an important issue. I would also say the VRBOs. I like the fact that we have I think it's 54 or 57 that we have within our community, which is 4% of our housing. That's a very wise decision. And also then any future ones need to be in the business district. That helps to keep those houses that can be available for those families, starter families. And then they can get into those homes and refurbish them and have their homes.
Thank you, Laura. And Todd, with the workforce shortage and related housing shortage in Two Harbors, how would you contribute to increasing housing for aging and working residents?
So I'll start by saying that this is a challenge that's not just faced by Two Harbors, but by many communities around the state. And neither Laura or I are going to snap our fingers and solve this problem. That being said, I'm excited that as part of zoning and planning, we just approved an initial concept plan for the potential development of the John A. Johnson site, which has been an eyesore and a pain for neighbors for years. It's probably 15 to 20 years late, but there is a plan now on the table. It would offer up to 48 housing units, which would be an incredible win for this community. Nothing is finalized, but at least we have a plan that's been tendered. When it came back from the county HRA and went back, into private, there were some constraints put on that. And as part of zoning and planning, we pushed hard to put teeth in that, to put some time limits on it. And now we have a concept plan in hand, which is fantastic. As a social worker at St. Luke's Hospital, Laura and I have worked together at St. Luke's since the time I moved here. I can't tell you how many people, elderly people I've had come into the hospital that are living in a 3-level house and using maybe 20% of that square footage because they can't access most of it. And I would say that the workforce housing and the senior housing issues are intimately linked with one another. I think the first emphasis should be on accessible senior housing, because that opens up the possibility of people that are living in inappropriate structures to move into appropriate structures, like a 2-step, and then that opens up those single family houses where a family can come in, raise a family, send their kids to our schools, support our community in a number of ways, grow our workforce, and without one, you can't have the other. So I'm happy to say that we provided feedback for that concept plan that they should very, very much emphasize single level living, because that's that first step of getting older people out of inappropriate housing into appropriate housing. We could use another 2 or 3 Laurel Lane developments in this town. We could. Can we get a developer to do that? We can't snap our fingers and do that. But I am open to all kinds of, any kind of creative way of getting developers in here, even if that's giving something to get something. Let them develop something that might be more profitable with a give back that they provide some of those affordable senior units.
Thank you, Todd. I'm going to throw in a question that you guys have sparked with me here. So we'll have you answer this first, Todd,
Okay.
and then come back to you, Laura. With the John A. Johnson concept plan that you have reviewed with the zoning and I've had the chance to look at and reported on in the Lake County Press, there are 2 units on that proposed concept plan that could have 6 apartments in them each. So I want
Maximum, yep.
maximum. And I do understand this is a concept plan and it's only proposed. How do you feel about, I live in that neighborhood. So I'm curious to know, Todd, how do you feel about there being apartment buildings really right in the heart of how just houses, plain old houses, neighborhood?
So zoning and planning has chosen to keep the zoning of that block open-ended, to allow the creativity that's required, to get a developer interested in that project. A more germane question for me, Kitty, is how do you feel about it? I mean, would you rather continue to look at the John A. Johnson decaying into the ground, or would you like some new units that might be have a little higher density? I think it's, getting some density and creating extra units there, that's the kind of give back I'm talking about. It may be more profitable for a developer to come in and doing a mixed use on that block rather than all single family. That's why we pushed hard for twin homes and raising the density a little, because it solves our housing crunch, and I think it is still a vast improvement over what we have there now and what people have been forced to look at for decades.
Thank you, Todd. So again, same question for you, Laura, because you had mentioned apartment buildings in residential neighborhoods. How would you feel about that, given that context that mostly those would be duplexes, we're going to call them, on that block to really provide a lot of units, and proposed 2 6-unit buildings at the end of the block?
Well, so Todd has an advantage being on the planning and zoning to have that knowledge. I didn't have that knowledge. I like the idea that it's open-ended. I agree with Todd that you need to be able to attract those developers. I don't want to see a high-structure type of apartment building. I just think it's not a good fit within a residential. I think we could have an opportunity where it'd be more, on the outskirts of our residential. I don't know what they look like, 6 seems like a high density to me. I like the idea of duplexes versus high density, but I do understand our housing crunch. So I'm certainly would be open to looking at it and understanding it, and then getting feedback from the residents that live in that area. We have to be careful we don't turn away developers either. It's sometimes that's happened in our town where we think we have a plan and we are gun ho, and then it falls apart, and then we really have no development, so.
Thank you, Laura.
You bet.
I'm just going off script here. I keep
Yeah.
thinking of good questions. This
Sure.
is a great conversation, you guys. So I want to talk about NAI Legacy again and the hotel, that plan. One of the things that I heard when they made their proposal, their presentation to the city council was, and Laura, you're going to answer this first, they talked about bringing in jobs. They're going to bring all these jobs. And I understand that they were trying to show the benefits of what their proposal could bring to the community. But what I heard was, you don't know that we have a housing crisis and that our workforce housing is very challenged, and that current businesses are really struggling to fill their positions and even be open enough hours where they have customers, but they don't have enough employees. So, Laura, tell me how you would address that with NAI Legacy and their idea that they're going to bring more jobs, which would be good for the economy, But we don't have the workers for them, do we?
Well, I would hate to turn away a business that brings in more workers. One of the things that I did here when I went around, and I agree, is refurbishing places. Could we look at some of the buildings around this area that are already here? Could we refurbish and get some apartments for workers? So that might be something that could be, something that could be attained in a shorter amount of time. So again, I wouldn't want to turn away, workers, but we have to keep working on this housing shortage. But that would be one of my thoughts. I know that the apartments, the county has refurbished quite a few apartments. The ones over up on 3rd, on 4th, and they're refurbishing the Lakeview apartments as those become empty. So that's what I would look for, more opportunity for refurbishing.
Thank you, Laura. Todd, you as well with NAI Legacy and the idea that they could bring additional jobs to the community. Where are those workers going to live? What would you say to NAI?
Yep, I have 2 points, I guess, on this. This kind of spurs 2 thoughts in my mind. One is to kind of return to the idea that this is exactly the idea that I talked about being creative and giving a little to get a little. So approaching a developer that wants to do a project that will be profitable for them. It's good for the community in some ways, but it's also profitable for them, is what can they offer in return? Would they pick up a project for some affordable housing development as a piece of the construction of this? I call it horse trading, if you will, but I mean, that's sometimes how these deals are made, is you're getting something you want, this is a need that our community has, and it's kind of a win-win because they're going to need places for those employees to live if they're going to work there. We don't want to turn this into a commuter community where people are coming in from elsewhere to work. We would like them to stay here, raise their families here, send their kids to school here. So that's one point that I would make is what room is there to negotiate with a developer that wants to do a project like this to perhaps give something back in terms of creating some other housing opportunities in town. And just to touch on the refurbishment point that Laura made, I'm in full agreement with that. The zoning and planning has been working on for 2 years, kind of scratching our heads, I will say, to try to identify blighted properties, unused properties here, and figuring out what carrots and sticks can be offered to people that own those structures to bring them up to code, to make them usable structures where families can live. And we're working with the city attorney to figure out how do you determine what's an unoccupied structure? What tools do we have in our tool belt to encourage them to renovate or at least fix up a structure and get it in a usable form rather than sitting empty? It's difficult when they're paying their taxes on a property, but yet it's going to seed. It's melting into the ground. At some point, it's affecting adjacent property owners, and we have a town that's in a housing crisis. I think we need to use all of those tools to encourage those structures to be repurposed, refurbished, and available for people to live in.
Thank you, Todd. You guys, my next question was about how you're going to implement this idea of the so many buildings that we really do have a lot that need to be fixed, and you both touched on that. Already, that's okay, Fran. It's a nice spell. So we're going to move on. Housing is one of my favorite topics. I guess I will go off script with another one since you guys kind of already answered one that I had. Sure. And Todd, I'll have you start and then come back to you, Laura. A lot of these things that you're talking about that have to do with housing would require a lot of communication and partnering between the county and the city, right? You would be a city elected official, but to really operationalize these sorts of projects require a new level of a relationship. So Todd, can you just address that as a city, if you were elected to this position as a city representative, what would you do to increase the communication or collaboration with the county?
Well, because we have a population less than 10,000, the county has to serve as the fiscal agent on a lot of these projects. The city cannot function as the fiscal agent. That means it's imperative that the county and the city are working hand in glove on these kinds of projects. I think it is encouraging that our city HRA and our county HRA are now working together. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't want the county HRA to fully take over that, because we have other communities, within this county that in some ways are our competitors for some of these funds and some of the resources. But we do need to cooperate. I mean, we're all in this together. This county, the largest municipality is Two Harbors, and I think sometimes Two Harbors gets the short shrift. We are not always the first in line for those county dollars. So building those relationships, certainly, having the city council and the county commission meet regularly to discuss this, to compare what our priorities are, to find out what their priorities are, so that we can maximize our ability to work together.
Thank you, Todd. And Laura, same question for you. What would you do, or what approaches do you see for increasing collaboration and cooperation between Two Harbors, the city of, and Lake County?
Well, like Todd said, they need to meet regularly. I think the city HRA, the city council needs education on the funding that's available out there, and I think the county is a huge resource for that. I think they have a wealth of information on the funding. They have the relationships to help get the funding. I think there's other types of things like TIFs, tax incremental, I forget now what financing, and there's public assistance. I mean, there's different opportunities that can be used to help fund a lot of these things and try to get the cost down so people can afford the housing or the rent. So it's imperative. They have to work collaboratively.
Thank you, Laura. And Laura, the next question is for you. We're going to leave housing for a moment.
Okay.
Laura, it's so exciting. Laura, in what ways, if you were elected, could your constituents hold you accountable?
Well, I want to hear from them. So I want to listen to them. I want them to reach out to me. As far as being accountable, bring their ideas to the city council. I think they need to be heard. So I'm their voice. I'm their voice at city council. So when those things come up, or if it's even something that's new, I'm bringing it up and there's discussion. And try to get them to be participating, come to city council also and say why you feel the way you do. I think that's important. I've worked with seniors recently. I have a soft spot for seniors, and I went to city council and met and tried to represent them. So I think it's important when I see something, a problem or something that my constituents, and whether it's roads or housing, I like to dig into things and bring those things forward and try to help find solutions. So
Okay.
I hope I answered that.
Thank you, Laura. Todd, if you are elected, how could your constituents hold you accountable?
Well, they always, there's the ballot box, there's that. But short of that, I would say, I've been to every doorstep in Ward 4 a minimum of 2 times. If I missed someone, I did the best I could to get back to the door to have the conversation. And the questions I'm asking basically are, what is the city doing well? And what could the city be doing better? What are missed opportunities? People tend to show up when they have a problem, but they often don't show up when someone's doing something well or want you to encourage you to do something, that they think would be better. So that's the kind of feedback that I've been asking from constituents, and I've had some very interesting, conversations. Of course, they always want to talk about the bad things, but I always try to tease out what are the good things, what can we capitalize on. And I think just being open to communication, I've shared my contact information with every constituent in the district. And I've had a few people that have taken the time to give me a call or send me an email. Not many, but some. But to be available. And, what I tried to communicate is, if elected, I would be your voice on the council. And, we're not at large. We're representing a ward. And though we want to do what's good for the city as a whole, we also want to balance that, making sure that the constituents in our particular ward are getting their needs met. It strikes me sometimes that Ward 4 is sometimes at the tail end. CGOG has a variety of problems that always seem to fall to the bottom of the priority list in this city. And I think they might need a little bit more of an advocate pushing for their particular needs in the part of the city that they live in.
Thank you, Todd. I'm just going to play off of that with another added question. One of the things that always comes up, being over a decade and a half attending public meetings, I'm well aware that citizens often aren't at meetings. So, Todd, what are your ideas on how to increase participation from residents in general in the city? How do we get more people at meetings or knowing what's actually happening?
Well, if you have the answer to that, no, I don't know. You offer them a buck. I don't know what you do. Like I said, people show up when they have an axe to grind, and that's unfortunate because that's not a good way. You end up with the tail wagging the dog in the city when it's just all problem focused. I think having public access cable, I know I'm able to only make one meeting a month currently for the city council, but it's been wonderful for me to access watching on public access on the YouTube channel. So there's not a huge number of views that I see, but there are some people that are paying attention, and maybe a little more than we think. I also think that it's great now that we have, 2 newspapers that are covering our council meetings. I'm not going to pick favorites among the 2, okay?
That's fair.
I'm being a politician. That's the only kind of politician I'll ever be right there. But, following those issues so that you're informed. But human nature is that until something like pokes you some way, we often don't pay attention. I could give you lots of stories about things I've been involved in where I've been very disappointed at the kind of public involvement. And there's a lot of things competing for people's attention, and they really want city government just to kind of function quietly without a lot of drama, and trust in the fact that things are getting done and that people are making good decisions on their behalf. Mm-hmm. I like the group that we have now. I think our city went through some very difficult times. I think the leadership and council that we have right now seems to be working well together. And I would be excited to be a part of that group.
Just one added question for you, Todd. If you were elected, would you make all of the city council meetings in person?
So, Laura and I were talking about this. We're both traveling a little more these days. But, the ability of Zoom to zoom in opens up the opportunity to at least involve yourself electronically if you're not physically in the chair. I would certainly make every attempt to be at every meeting where I am physically in Two Harbors.
Gotcha.
And to the extent that's possible to be involved in times when I'm not in Two Harbors via Zoom.
Thank you, Todd. Laura, back to you with the same question.
All right.
How do we increase participation? What ideas do you have to get people more involved or more to make it more accessible so that they can be more involved?
Yeah, so I think the accessibility with the radio and with the YouTube and all of that, and like Todd said, I look at the minutes and I read the minutes on the website. So that's available. I think it is hard nowadays to get people involved. But as I was walking around our ward, I was thinking about that. And I thought, so if I'm elected and I've already walked around and I'm knocked on these doors, how do I continue to keep my ward knowing that I'm here and that I'm listening? And so I was thinking, I'm a walker. So do I drop something off and knock on doors more often? Or do I put something where we have a Ward 4 meeting, just kind of to get those people together, so I make sure that I'm hearing those voices. So I was trying to think of ways that you could do that, or maybe do more of some smaller neighborhood things every once in a while, because I think that's important. The other thing that's important is even when you're out in the public, people approach you and they have questions, you need to stop and listen even then, even though you're out maybe having dinner or you're doing something. It's important to be accessible then, take the time to listen. As you know, my husband's a commissioner. he does it all the time, and that's fine. And I'll walk away and go find one of my friends and let him do what he does. And he gets calls all the time. And he'll get calls from people in Minneapolis, complaining about their VRBO up here. But he takes those calls. And he says it's important to be that person. And many times people are reaching to him because he's very accessible, and where others, maybe because they're working, I'm not throwing people under the bus, but maybe not as accessible, they will call him. And that's fine. Even as a community, being a counselor, I think anybody in the community should approach me, being on city council, emailing me or calling me. I think that's important, so.
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Kitty, can I just throw in one more thing?
You go ahead.
It's not any kind of rebuttal, but one thing that I've been very cognizant of since I moved to Two Harbors is the website is not a great website. It's hard to navigate. It's hard to find what you're looking for. I'm no expert in web design, but I think the city might want to invest a little time and thought into redesigning its website to make it more accessible so that people can more easily find things that they need, that they're wanting to find when they're on there.
Okay, thank you, Todd. I'm going to come back to you, Laura, with the next question. Are we ready to talk about climate change? Because that's what we're going to talk about.
We are.
Yes.
Boy.
What actions can the city take locally to reduce the impacts of climate change, and what steps should be taken to make this city and region more resilient and ready to adapt in response to current and future climate impacts? Go ahead, Laura.
That's a big loaded question. So, in our region is when I think about climate change, you think of temperatures, you think of snowstorms, you think of all of that, or even just the maintaining our lake. I think about our Lake Superior. We are fortunate in that part of our lake goes into Canada, so there are special regulations where people can't take our water and send it off to Arizona or wherever. But I think maintaining our shoreline so that we don't have a lot of erosion. Being ready for any disasters. We do have an emergency preparedness team and plan for our city. So if there is a major snowstorm or I think about that storm, how many years ago was it where the boulders in Duluth were coming down the roads and we had the flooding and all of that. And my basement flooded that morning. I was supposed to fly out of Duluth. That was a major thing there. Having the emergency preparedness for that, and like I said, we do have plans for that. I was working at the hospital when there was a horrible snowstorm, and at that time, we didn't have the radios that you needed. And since then, we've upgraded that system. I think Dr. Josephs went to the end of the breakwall to get somebody in Wisconsin to call the hospital in Duluth. It was crazy, So I think about climate change and what's affecting us. Yeah, I guess I would step back to our emergency preparedness plan for storms and things like that, and our lake.
Thank you, Laura. Todd, what actions can the city take locally to reduce the impacts of climate change, and what steps should be taken to make this city and region more resilient and ready to adapt in response to current and future climate impacts?
I think we're fortunate to live in a part of the country that's been oftentimes characterized as a climate change haven. But even within that region that is supposedly so immune to the effects of climate change, we've seen 100-year flood events several times in the last 2 decades. We've had a 500-year flood event, the one that Laura was talking about in Duluth. There were bears and seals in the streets of Duluth from the zoo. I think we have to be mindful. Climate change, I will say right now, is real. It's happening. We have to prepare our infrastructure. The county is upgrading culverts right now. I think a part of that is, making those culverts bigger to accommodate heavy rainfall events. I think the city has to be mindful anytime we're doing any infrastructure upgrade that we may have to add some percentages to the size of things. we're back in a drought again. I think this is going to be a trend, unfortunately, that only accelerates, and it should be a part of every discussion when we're building infrastructure.
Thank you, Todd. Okay, we're going to go on. Todd, you can have this first. How can we revitalize the old downtown area? How can we revitalize the old downtown area?
Wow.
Go.
I mean, I think we've touched on this in a way already. We have a wonderful opportunity down here. We have a gem in that property that's being turned over to the city from the DNR. So how do we make that a economic generator as well as a really nice amenity? We have some open space down here. We have some unoccupied buildings that go around, our downtown that could certainly benefit from bringing a few more people down here that are going to spend some time and some money here. I think that's a good start. On zoning and planning, I started the discussion, and it kind of went to the council to die someplace, and that's one of the reasons why I really want to be in the council, is because the council is where the actions happens. Committees can recommend till they're blue in the face, but until the council takes it off the table and actually deals with it. That proposal was to create a social district in our downtown area. I invite people to Google social district. There's, I think, now 3 communities in the state of Minnesota that have designated a social district. It takes the agreement of your legislative contingent, so it would take our House and Senate member, but neither one of them has voiced any opposition to this. So I think it's sitting there as a low-hanging piece of fruit. By defining this as a social district, you open up opportunities to people that want to cater to kind of adult use purposes. Drinking and eating establishments, maybe now that cannabis is legal, bringing in that as an element. We have to push people, I think, on that second block, our second avenue, to start doing something with the structures there and not letting them just sit there. There's opportunities, there's entrepreneurs out there that probably would love to get in there and start doing some things. And I think that would be one way of kind of generating that momentum.
Thank you, Todd. And Laura, how can we revitalize the old downtown area?
So I would kind of echo a lot of what Todd said. I think Second Avenue, there's a lot of opportunity there to look at what kind of establishments to put there and try to get some developers in there and attract the type of business that you would want in that area. There's also the buildings that are on First Avenue, like next to Harbor, the old Seagram's building, you know. I hate to see those vacant like that too. I wish that we could find some way to obtain that and get some business in there. Continuing to attract people down to the downtown area is very important. I know that the lighting, that brought a lot of people down here last winter. I thought that was just a great idea, and that's going to continue this year, and I hope we can build upon that. Just a very unique thing that we did down here. So revitalizing those old buildings, a lot of them are eyesores. They need to be torn down and get the right businesses down here. So,
Thank you, Laura. And I'll have you start with the next question. Do you intend to serve the community in another capacity if you lose? And could you share your thoughts about that?
to serve my community, well, I'm already on the city rec board, and I want to continue on that. You know, we serve from the seniors on down to the youth, and I think we're missing something in that, though. I think I would like to see a city assessment of what else people are looking for city rec. I'd like to get some new ideas. I feel like we kind of keep doing the same thing, so I've been pushing for that, and I would really like to see that happen. I think our young adults were missing an opportunity with city rec. I'm a nurse. I believe in health and wellness and getting outside and enjoying yourself and walking and doing sports and pickleball. You know, that's a big thing, and we opened up the arena this year for pickleball. Kind of slow this year, but we said we're going to do it again next year, and hoping we can get more people to participate in that. I'm also the president of the curling club. This is my first year doing that. I've been an active curler for many, many years. My family is all curlers, so I come from a curling family. That's an all-volunteer group there. We don't have one paid employee, and it's an amazing group of people. And an amazing board, a hard-working board. All of us put in many hours, and I want to continue with that. When I think of city council, I want to try, if I don't make it on the city council, I will make it to more meetings. I want to be more informed of my community. I want to be able to voice my thoughts, and I know that you can do that there. And still continue to listen to the public and bring ideas forward. I like to, if you're not growing, if you're not changing, you're not growing. And so you need to be always looking ahead and thinking of what can you do next. I'm also a decision maker. That can be good and bad. I don't like subcommitting things till they kind of go away, like you said, and you wonder where did they go. I tend to bring things back up. So I like to have a resolution, whether it's going to be gone or it's not going to be gone, or can we make a decision? And on a board is made up of all kinds of different people coming with different knowledge, different experiences, different backgrounds, and that's very important because you want to have all those different ideas expressed so everybody can hear the opinions, get the constituents' opinions, try to make the best decisions. Sometimes you'll make a mistake, and that's okay if you make a mistake. I'm really good at saying I'm wrong. Ask my husband. It's okay to be wrong, or take a step back and say, okay, I've got new information. Maybe we need to do something different here. So,
Thank you, Laura. Todd, do you intend to serve the community in another capacity if you lose, and could you share your thoughts about that?
Sure. I've always been a community-involved person. My wife might complain too community-involved because sometimes it competes with other things. Prior to moving here, at one point in time, I was a member of 5 different organizations, and I was the president of 3 of them and on the executive committee of the other 2. I think it was something that was kind of bred into me by my parents. They were both very community-involved people. If I don't win here in November, I'm certain I will remain involved. In what capacity? I don't know. I will find things that follow my interests. I would remind everyone that there's going to be a second city council seat open for special election in February, most likely. So, there's the opportunity for someone to maybe get involved that way by looking at that at-large seat. I'm not ready to commit to whether I would do that or not, but Two Harbors offers lots of opportunities for involvement. There's lots of commissions. I would like to remain, I have a particular interest and background in zoning and planning. It won't be under my control, but I would like to retain my board, the position as the council liaison on that commission if possible. I don't know if there'll be someone senior to me that covets that more than I do or wants to do that. But there's no shortage of good things that can be done in this community, and I'm certain I'll remain involved.
Very good. And you guys were a little worried to begin with if you were going to fill all this time, but you're doing a great job, and we're getting very close to the end. So now
I haven't even heard her ring the bell yet. So
No.
I'm okay.
So now we're going to move into your ending statements. You're going to get 2 minutes each, and Todd will have you begin with that, and then Laura will get her 2 minutes. So tell us what we didn't ask you or what you want to emphasize.
Well, I'd just like to reemphasize, my thanks for Laura for seeking the seat. It's been a much more fruitful process. The last time the seat was open, nobody filed. It went to a write-in, and my biggest fear was that would happen again. I don't think the city is served well when nobody is interested in running for something. So having 2 people or more getting out there and stating their vision, I think, is good for voters, and it's good for democracy and representation within the community. I would just say that I have a career, kind of a diverse career background, working as a classroom teacher, a nonprofit director, a social worker with both at the state and county level. I am a systems person. I've been involved in a lot of different systems. I kind of know how things work, and I'd like to bring that kind of accumulated set of skills and knowledge to this task. That's why I decided to run. I welcome people to make their choice on whatever basis it is. I'm not born and raised here, but I moved here because we've been coming here my entire life, and I loved it here. And when we had the opportunity to move here, we jumped at it because this is the place we chose to live. And I just want to make it a fantastic community. I want to keep the things here that I fell in love with, but also improve it as well.
Thank you, Todd. And Laura, go ahead and give us your 2-minute wrap and what we forgot to ask you or what you'd like to emphasize.
Well, I would say that I'm excited to be on the council. I want to bring my leadership skills and my knowledge that I have just within this community to continue with the growth. I think this community has a lot to offer people. I think it has a lot to offer as far as industry and tourism. I think we have a lot of areas we can improve on. I look around and I see the beauty, but then I see some areas, of the blight or even down on the waterfront that need to be improved and cleaned up, and the sidewalks and driving down to the break wall and Seagog, like you said, they're kind of like the second child or the third child, they don't get all the same pictures taken in the albums and everything. So I just think it's important to just be part of this process, and I like to dig into things, like I said, and I like to make decisions and move forward, and that's important to me. But also, like I said, listening to everybody and being on a respectful board, which I think, like you said, there's some good members on that board, and I would look forward to working with them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you both. And a bonus question, just because we have an extra minute. What do you love most about Two Harbors, Laura?
Oh, I love the lake and the oar boats.
Thank you. And Todd, what do you love most about Two Harbors?
I love the seasons.
I
love everything about, every season has something special here.
Absolutely. Thank you very much to Laura Goutermont and Tod Redmann and for their cooperation in arranging this forum. And thank you to our audience, those in the chamber and the people listening on the radio and internet, for your attention to the issues in our town. The complete forum will be posted online on the Two Harbors channel, thpact.org, as well as online on the KTWH YouTube channel. The full audio will be available on the ktwh.org homepage from the programs dropdown. The candidate forum was sponsored by the Lake County Press, Two Harbors Media, and KTWH Community Radio. Special thanks to Jose Leon for his work on the streaming production. Thanks as well to Fran Callagher for timekeeping tonight. Don't forget that we have until November 5th to vote in this very important general election. Thanks and good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was nice, Laura.
Yeah,
It
I
was
think
enjoyable.
we echoed a lot of the same things.
Yeah, how was Jay's?
Oh, it was good.
I'm sorry
It was
we were out of town.
No, it was well attended, and it was very good.
Yeah, sorry.